Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. It's the Baby Playbook podcast. Of course, I am your host, Nikolina Karufe. That is quite a mouthful. Thanks for joining me. I'm always so grateful for your company. Now, if you've been joining us the last couple of episodes, you may have noticed we're doing a little bit of a series at the moment. As I've mentioned in my previous episodes, we are going through a little bit of a crisis when it comes to childcare in Australia at the moment. And that has made a lot of parents like myself really nervous about sending our kids, just a little bit anxious about what to expect, really curious about what to ask, how to look for a daycare, and how to pick a great care center for our children and then keep on top of that care as well. So I really want to navigate parents through this. Of course, I understand that this decision to send your child into care, which may look all like a million different ways, by the way, which we'll get to in just a second. It starts really perhaps when you are pregnant and when you're starting to think about what your life is going to look like with a child and when you might have to head back to work if you have to, what care options you have around you. So you might be thinking about this right now while you're pregnant, or right now whilst you have a newborn, or right now whilst you have a 6-month-old. But it is something that a lot of us have to think about. So we've had a couple of episodes talking about all different aspects of this. We spoke to psychologist Rachel Tomlinson a couple of weeks ago. We also delved back into our amazing episode with Jessica Sard, an education teacher and owner of an amazing childcare centre herself. And she broke down what you should look for in a daycare, which is really handy. She really breaks down all the questions you should be asking, what you should be thinking about, how you should be assessing them. That was really, really handy. But what today I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be doing a little bit of a solo episode. I don't have a guest today, so it's just me. Apologies if you don't want it to be just me. But what I'm going to be doing is just giving my own tips on what I've learned over time being a daycare parent. I have 2 kids. They both attend daycare, and they did so from the age of around 8 to 10 months. So we've been on this journey. We are still in this journey. They still attend, and we've gone through multiple different centers as well due to just some life changes. So I have quite a bit of experience in this area, just first-hand experience, and I wanted to pop out this chapter that I have, which is of course, in my Mum Advice e-guide, which you guys is available for purchase. It has everything to do with the 0 to 6 month mark as a parent. It's an amazing e-guide that that is available for you to purchase. So I'll pop the link in the show notes. But I want to pull out this chapter and really share with you all of my tips around daycare and childcare and finding a center. So of course, whether it's daycare, grandma, it might be a nanny, preparing to leave your baby with someone else is an incredibly daunting experience for many. And it's also a really big transition for both you and baby. So these are a few of the things I wanted to share on how you can prepare for the change nice and early. Now, first of all, something that we don't really realize is looking for daycare centers around your local area will be priority because the wait lists are so long. Yes, daycare centers, childcare centers, even some nannies, perhaps if you have your eyes set on one, they have a long wait list. So you need to be looking pretty soon after you kind of realize that you need a daycare for your child, or that's something that you'd be looking for. I would be doing it around 5 or so months before your little one needs to start. That's at minimum. When it comes to daycare centers, a few tips here is Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursdays are the most popular days, and they're the hardest to get into. And that's due to the fact that Mondays and Fridays, most parents, if one of them is working part-time, they usually have a Monday or Friday off just due to convenience and lifestyle. So less of them need that care. So those are the least popular days you'll find in a daycare center. And they're also where public holidays fall. And what you will realize is with a daycare center, at least like a long daycare center, you do still at most of them pay for a public holiday, even though your child cannot attend that day. So just a note. A lot of people, what they will do is try and get into a daycare center by accepting a Monday or a Friday once it becomes available. And then it's much easier to actually shift your days to the ones that you actually want once you get into the center, because you are then given priority because your child already attends. So just get your head around that. Those little tips about days and also which ones are the most popular and harder ones to get into. The other thing to note with long daycare centers, at least as well, is that most of them may have a 2-day minimum. And the reason is that it might be a requirement or a recommendation. Double check which one it is. Most centers will say that the research shows that you would like your child in a center at least minimum of 2 days so that they can get really familiar with the center and familiar with the educators. Going just 1 day a week, it'll be really hard for them to get really used to it and comfortable at that center. So a lot of them will then make it a requirement that you are enrolled your child for at least 2 days. So take that into account. When it comes to searching for a daycare, if you don't know where to start, ask your local family and friends for referrals, or even just your mother's group. It's a really good way to get, an idea of what's around you, what people recommend, who has had a really good experience with one, who's had a really bad experience with one. It's just good to get a really good idea of what's out there. Now, when choosing a daycare center, it's important to note that they all have different styles of care. So if you, for example, are a routine style mum, you kind of need to find a center that's a little bit more flexible with the day. So you want to make sure that you're asking the right questions when it comes to this. Some of the daycare centers, perhaps if they're a little bit on the bigger side, they're less flexible when it comes to your particular child and their sleep needs or their feed needs. And that just means that they have set times in the day when all the kids are encouraged to have a nap or all the kids are having lunch. So if you need something a little bit more flexible, of course, you need to think about whether there is a daycare that is a little bit more flexible. Just ask the question. Remember, no question is a dumb question. Or perhaps you need a little bit more of a flexible style of care. Now, the other thing to note is daycare is expensive, okay? We do not realize how expensive it is until you start paying that fee. Apply for any government support available to really help you financially. If you are one of our Australian listeners or in specifically New South Wales, you know that most families in New South Wales do qualify for the childcare subsidy, which is just a particular amount of money, a percentage of the daycare fee that you are subsidized by the government, so you don't have to pay the full daily fee. When it comes to daily fees as well, I want to also break down that there are different daily fees. So you could ask your center. Some of them charge a 12-hour fee. Some of them charge a 14-hour fee. Some of them charge a half-day option. Some of them charge a full-day option. Ask these questions so you get a really good picture and idea of what's available and on offer for you so you can get the best deal out there. Maybe you do not need the full 12-hour day. Maybe you just need an 8-hour day or whatever it may be. But of course, taking note that would then reduce your hours and the flexibility that you have for pickup and drop off. But ask those questions. It's not just one daily rate at many centers. Now, it's important that your baby is comfortable being around other people. So what I would do is if you know that they're about to head into daycare, start to socialize them a little bit. Let your friends and family hold them, feed them, even try to get them used to doing naps at family and friends' houses. Just familiar in different environments, so then they're not just used to the one routine with you and only with dad and only at their house. It's important for them to get used to other environments and other people as well. It makes things a lot easier when you need to leave them in care and get them used to a different environment. Now, if your child will be taken care of by family or friends, set up a bit of a second nursery at their house. This would be really handy so that you're not lugging all of your things over to this place when your baby attends 1 to 2 days a week. I did this at my mum's house and my beautiful mother-in-law's house as well. We got a free cot from Gumtree or Marketplace because there's so many on there. So we just got that into a room so it was there. We didn't have to worry about a porta cot or anything like that. We could bought a really cheap high chair from the IKEA, the plastic one. Just get those extra things so then you're not really dragging those around. The other extra item that you may want to purchase is like a cheap stroller so you can leave it at the carer's house as well, so then they can take your child on a walk for some fresh air, because I guess the worst thing you want to do is just leave them there and they're kind of stuck in the house with them. Another thing you might consider is, as well as baby gets older, is for example getting an extra car seat for the carer's car. This is something that my amazing mum and mother-in-law have also done, and that also helps them to get out and about with the child. They might go to the local shopping center or the park if you feel comfortable with them doing that, and then they can also even potentially pick up baby when you need them to in a emergency situation or in a random situation. Now, if your baby is on a routine, or even if they are, put together a bit of a clear instruction for their carer or even daycare on what their day looks like. Usually when you enroll your child into a daycare, they will give you a couple of forms, and a lot of them are like, get to know my baby, and it'll ask you all these things about What feed times do they have? How much do they usually have? Instructions on making bottles, sleep times, how do they go to sleep? Do they have a comforter? All that sort of stuff. So I think it's a really good idea to do this even, of course, if you have a babysitter or a nanny or an au pair or a family daycare or a family or friend as well. If they're going to daycare, of course, speak to the centre about their routine and put together some information on your child's needs and habits so they really familiarise themselves with it. Again, it's never, ever too inappropriate to ask about customizing care for your child at a daycare center, even though you feel like they're just one of many kids and you couldn't possibly ask them of that. All right, I'm going to slow down a little bit. I feel like I'm rushing through this. If your child is being looked after by family or friends, it's important that you are communicating with them your expectations of their care. So you also need to be mindful that everyone's different and everyone has different levels of comfort when it comes to caring for children. So be honest and understanding is my tip here when it comes to this area. I think you obviously want to feel comfortable with anybody that's looking after your baby. You want to give them clear instructions, as I said, and as much information as possible about your baby so that you can make it as easy as possible for them as well. But your expectations of their care and things going perfectly is sometimes a little bit unrealistic. So I think it's really important to just have those honest conversations and also be really understanding when it comes to these conversations as well. Now, the other thing I wanted to note for our Australian listeners, because I don't really know what the protocol is in other nations, but something that I actually came across back when I had Noah and I was working really early hours in the day. I was doing breakfast radio at the time. So I was working from about like 4:30 a.m. and my husband was working from about 7 a.m. on deck and could not work from home. This was pre-COVID or just during COVID, work from home wasn't really becoming a thing. We realized that the childcare subsidy can also be applied for some families that do qualify on nanny services. And that is purely for families who can prove a few different things. But one of the things is that they cannot physically get their child to a long daycare center or a family daycare center within their opening hours. So of course, with long daycares, we know that they open quite early. Some of them open at 6 a.m., 6:30, 7 a.m. But if you can prove that you can't actually get there by that time, or you start work way earlier and your partner can't either, or perhaps it's the pickup that you can't get to, then you may qualify to actually get a childcare subsidy for a nanny. Something that you should totally look into. Make sure you Google that, get on it. I think it's Service New South Wales or Centrelink or whatever it may be, but that is there. And that was a really, really good tip that I found when I was looking for a service and considering my options. Where I want to end this podcast episode is questions to ask a daycare center. You may think you know exactly what to ask a daycare during a tour of the facility, but there's some more detailed questions that you may miss that I think are incredibly important. And again, it's only because I've been searching for daycares a couple of times due to lifestyle changes that I got really familiar with what to be asking. First of all is, do you have a set sleep schedule for all kids or do you follow my child's schedule? This is more for the routine mums. Really important to ask the question because, of course, this may become an issue. Your child is already in a different environment. They might not be comfortable sleeping at the start, so that might be a challenge. On top of that, if they're being put down at set times that don't really align with their particular routine, that can also cause some sleep issues. So ask the question, you never know. When it comes to meals, do you serve all kids the same food or you're able to puree, mash if needed? This is an important question because I think in this day and age of a lot of baby-led weaning versus puree, that debate, if you are choosing one or the other, then you might want to ask what daycare is actually doing and what they can do for your baby. Because if you would like them to follow that particular choice of food food style that you've chosen, then you need to ask that question. Another one, are you open on public holidays? Do you charge for those days? Are you closed any other periods in the year? Now, a lot of daycare centers actually do not close at all other than just public holidays. So they don't even do like a Christmas closure period, but then some do as well. It might be 2 weeks, it might be 1 week, it might be a whole month. You need to familiarize yourself with this because, of course, when your daycare is closed, it means that you need to organize alternative care for your child or you need to take that time off work. So ask that question. What's the earliest drop-off time and latest pickup time? This is another good question. You need this to align with your routine. You need this to align with the fact that one of you, mum or dad, needs to get to pick up or drop off at a particular time, especially if you work weird hours or shift work or anything like that. What does the daily cost cover? So this is really important because you need to know what this covers so that you know that you're getting your bang for your buck. What meals are included, and do I need to pack nappies? So the daily cost can sometimes cover all meals. So that might mean breakfast, lunch, dinner, morning tea, and afternoon tea. Although it might not cover dinner. So for example, they might say they give them a late snack, but they don't serve them dinner. It might not cover breakfast. It might just start with a morning tea. So you need to make sure that you're giving your baby breakfast in the morning. These are all things to consider. You might want to ask them as well, is that if you do provide food, for example, if you know you're going to be late one day, can you provide a couple of pouches for them to serve them for dinner if it's around 5:30, and that's when you usually serve your baby dinner? They'll usually say yes, but it's worth asking. The other thing to note is, of course, nappies can get very expensive. So it would be great if they are included in the daily cost, but some places do not include this. I've been to a daycare where they included nappies and then another daycare that didn't, and I needed to pack nappies. A note with this, if you are packing nappies, make sure you write their name on them. Make sure you just give the minimum amount of nappies you think they're going to need during the day, because I felt like there was a little bit of stocking going on at the daycare that we were doing, because every time I'd put like 5 daycares in there, 5 nappies in there, all of a sudden they'd all be gone. And I thought, well, you haven't changed 5 nappies that day. And then the other thing to note is, of course, what to do when it comes to bottles, because a lot of daycare centers do not provide formula. And if your child is also still breastfeeding, they might be still doing a bottle of breast milk. So you need to take into consideration that you will be also packing that for baby and getting that ready for baby as well. All right, I think I've kind of covered what I can cover there. Let me take one little second. This isn't great for a podcast, but to think if there's any other tips that I can give you around this, because I just want to get you really prepared for what daycare is and what it has to offer. One other thing actually that comes to mind now is to think outside the box when it comes to daycare. So you might be thinking, I need a daycare really, really close to my house, and that's really convenient, of course, for drop off and pick up. But another alternative could be, well, where am I actually working? Could I take them all the way to work, drop them off at daycare, be nice and close to them, then I can pick them up and head home for the day. So think outside the box when it actually comes to the center. It might be a center that's close to your family that can do pickup for you, to your mum or your mother-in-law or your father-in-law who can do the pickup, or maybe you can coordinate with a friend and a friend can do pickup for you. So just think outside the box when it comes to your daycare, and not necessarily just the one around the corner. That might be the most convenient. Okay, I think I'm going to end it there because I could probably think of another few tips, and that's just too much. But the main ones are in there. So that is your episode with all of my daycare and childcare tips for you. Hey, next week we're going to get into another topic, another aspect of this topic of childcare and searching for childcare for your child. If you are loving these episodes, I would ask for a favor, if that's okay. Can you please rate the podcast, or give it a follow, or give it a comment? Just some sort of interaction on the platform that you're listening to would be so appreciated. Thanks so much, team.